So here we have the light switches. This light turns on the on-air sign outside. This one is for the upper lights. And then you have your mood or jazz lighting right here. We have more light switches, it's a lot to keep track of. You have your on-air office sign. Again, more upper lights. And more jazz and mood lighting. Here's your sign-in sheet. Sign in. Put your name, show time, show date, and of course, add a comment if you feel like.
This is the mixing board. It's the heart and soul of the radio station operation. The way it works is there's a bunch of sliders that move up and down, and when you move those up and down, it controls the volume output for whatever device you are controlling at that time. Right now, when anything is on a yellow light, that device is stopped. To turn something on, you hit start and then slide it up to the desired volume. Right now,
90.3 WARC in Meadville.
We are listening to our automation system, which is what is on the air anytime a DJ is not on the air. As you just saw, you can control the volume in the studio with this knob. So automation right now, it's running, as we can see by the red button here. Automation is put up at about the star. That's generally where we want to leave it. And anytime you finish your show, you can turn on automation and slide it up to there. We have a number of different inputs. There's blue line and orange line. These can plug into a phone or a computer or a 1980s Sony Walkman cassette deck. Whatever device you plug in, if it's a phone or a computer, you'll probably want the volume turned all the way up on that device. We'll put it on shuffle and you'll see whatever random thing comes on. This might be embarrassing. So to start playing music from one of these devices, I'm going to fade out automation, hit stop. You could leave it on start. I'll turn on the blue line, since that's what I'm plugged into, and I'll turn it up until it starts playing. You can hear it in the studio here, and if you look at these meters, you're generally going to want to keep the needle in this 3210 range of the meter. The slider, to some extent, controls that, so if I have the slider way down here, you can see the needles are barely moving. If I put the slider way up to the top, that's bad. It's got way too much sound output right now. So you don't want to leave it up there in the red. Generally right about in the middle, and if it bounces into the red slightly, that's no big deal. Okay, my show's over. I'm going to put automation back on. I'm going to slide out the blue line, turn on automation, and put it back up to the stars. The other thing that you'll need to do during your show is you'll probably need to talk on the air. We'll cover when you need to talk later, but to use any of our microphones, there's 4 of them. This is the primary microphone, number 1, and then these 3 microphones over by Grace. It's the same deal as when you're controlling any other input. You turn it on and you move the slider to control the output of your voice. Generally, you'll want to have the microphone at about mouth height, talking directly into it. About a hand length away is usually fine. When you turn on a microphone though, it shuts off the sound in the studio. That way the speakers aren't putting out the sound of your voice, having it go back into the microphone, putting it out, and creating a feedback loop, which is that loud screechy sound that you hear at about the beginning of every presentation that has ever been given over a microphone. So if I go to talk, in this case I'll turn off automation, I'll turn on microphone 1, and I'll slide it up until the people over the airwaves can hear me doing this video. You'll notice that as I'm talking, I'm able to watch where I have the slider placed and where the VU meters are for the output of my voice. Anyway, you can have 4 microphones going at once if you're doing a talk show. Other inputs that we have, there's the 4 microphones that we just talked about. There's CD players 1 and 2, which have their own sliders. We'll talk about this one later. There's turntables 1 and 2, automation, orange line, and blue line. CD player number 3 is controlled by a toggle switch up here. It is currently off, and orange line is turned on. If we want to turn on CD3, you press the AB button, it lights up orange, and then it replaces orange line with CD3. The slider here that says recorder and comrex, this is what you use for recording your show, which is covered in another video, or for doing remote broadcasting, which is also covered in another video. For these light up buttons here, you're going to want to leave everything on program except for the recorder comrex slider. Additionally, for recording shows, you want everything to be set onto audition, the green light, again, except for the recorder comrex slider. Essentially, unless you're doing something really fancy, don't mess with any of these buttons. This controls the meters that we're able to look at. You'll always want to leave the source panel set to on air and the switched meters set to audition. One thing we can talk about is Q, which is this knob here. I've got automation playing currently, but let's say I want to queue up a song on my phone. I've got my phone plugged into Blue Line. The same thing works with a turntable or a CD player, whatever it is. I've got the volume fairly down for the automation that's currently playing. For Blue Line, since that's what I'm plugged into, I'll hit the Q button right here above the labels, and now it's playing what's on my phone through this little speaker in the board. And I can control the volume to hear that. This isn't going over the air. It's just for you to reference what's going on a CD player, a turntable, another computer, whatever it is. Another thing you should know, we have a transmitter kill switch. This button you essentially should never really use. It's there for in case of some sort of emergency where the Federal Communications Commission might call us and say we need you to go off of the air, and the DJs need to be able to take it off the air. If you have to use this switch, you flip it up, and then you hit the switch forward. To shut it back off, or to turn the transmitter back on, you just set it down and everything comes back to life. Generally don't touch that unless Federal Communications Commission orders us to do so, or if a board member who's in the know comes in here and tells you to. If you don't want to listen to your show through our studio monitors, you can listen via headphones. You can bring in your own set, or there's 4 pairs right here in the studio for your convenience. To listen to just your own show, say you're the only DJ in here, you can put on your headphones and plug them into this headphone jack. If you have multiple people in here talking and you need to have headphones on to balance the audio levels of each person that's talking while watching the meters, we have a headphone mixing board here, which will be covered in another video. This is the emergency alert system. Much like the kill switch, it's something that you need to know how to use, though hopefully you won't have to. This is the thing that sends out those weird screeching noises that you hear on the radio now and then puts out a weather bulletin like there's a tornado heading right for Meadville and everybody needs to shelter in place, that kind of thing. This does weekly tests on its own, and if the National Weather Service, FCC, whatever, needs to send out a broadcast over all radio, this will kick in and take over in place of your show. Sometimes there might be a call from the FCC or some other organization that says, we need you to do a test of your emergency alert. To do that, there's the week button right here, menu, week, and message. For week, you press that, you enter the password, which is 1111, very secure, and then you'll do a weekly test. As you can hear, there's music playing. When we hit proceed, it'll kick in. And then it'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming. Again, don't be alarmed if this kicks in on its own while you're doing your show. And it's not likely that you will be required to do one of those tests while you're doing your show, but it is possible and you're required to know how to use it. This is the automation computer. It is what runs whenever there's not a DJ in here, and what the automation slider controls that we already talked about. Generally speaking, most DJs are not going to need to work with this computer, and it's best to just leave it alone, that way it doesn't run into any problems. While we're here, we can also point out the request line phone. During your show, you can give shout-outs of the station number, which we have marked on the board, 814-332-5275. And people might call in during your show via this phone to give a request about songs to play or a topic to talk about if you have a talk show. These are our CD players. We've got CD player 1, which is this half, CD player 2, which is this half, and CD player 3, which is this section. To work CD player 3, you just put in a CD and hit whatever button you need. For CD players 1 and 2, you hit this button to eject the tray. And then you can put your CD in. Make sure your CD is not upside down or that way, because it won't work. Press the button again. It will auto cue it up, but it won't start playing. You can turn on CD player 1, fade out automation or whatever else you're playing, and then you can hit the big play button. One thing that you might want to note is this single or continuous button. When it's set to single, it will only play one track off of that CD and then it will automatically pause. If single is not selected, it's set to continuous mode and it will just play song after song after song on that CD. This is the box of public service announcements. We'll talk about when you have to play them a bit more when we go through the hot clock, but generally it's 15 minutes after the hour and 15 minutes till the hour.
So here you have a guide to the hot clock, which again is not a strip club. So at the top of the hour, make sure that you say our legal station ID, which is WARC in Meadville. Can be said no other way. At the 15-minute mark and usually the 45-minute mark, right here, on a clock typically, you will play a PSA, and at the bottom of the hour you can usually do something about the weather, say something about how to call in, and do whatever you want.
After your public service announcement has played, just eject it and put it at the back of the box. That way it goes into the end of that rotation. This is our big library of CDs. It covers this entire back wall, which is pretty awesome. These first two shelves are everything that is in the main library. These are all alphabetized. Over here, though, it's the rack of more special stuff. So we have View from the Vault, which is a lot of older things. If there's a band that we're bringing to campus sometime soon, we'll usually put CDs of them right here. This is newer stuff. Rotation is fairly new, but not the newest. We have a variety of different genres on this shelf as well. This is the WARC guide to genre. White is alternative, red is hip-hop, pink is metal, light green is electronica, dark green is reggae, yellow means it's a CD that kicks ass, yellow with stars means it kicks mega ass, and then there's orange for jazz.
So if you ever wanted to know what cake sounds like, because I really do, you pull out your CD, but at the same time, pull out a CD that's next to it and leave it just a little bit out so that you can put it back after you found out what cake sounds like.
If you want to spin some vinyl, the turntables are under here. We've got two turntables. One of them is more of a concert DJ type turntable, fairly standard, and another one is a little bit more fancy but also pretty easy to use. For turntable 1, you can pull off this cover, it isn't attached, and set it down, and you can grab your vinyl. Generally, when you're handling vinyl, you want to handle it just by the edges to not get oils and grit and stuff on the actual grooves. You go ahead and put it on. If you want to play a 45, we have these nice little adapters for the larger hole of a 45. You put those right over the pin, and then the 45 sits right over top of that. To use turntable 1, you turn this little knob to turn it on, and then you can press the start button. You can select 33 RPM for your bigger records or 45 for your smaller ones. And then to be able to play music with it, you undo the little lock right here on the tone arm. You pick it up, you can move it over the record, and then pull this lever down to drop the needle onto the record. It's now playing. Say that when you put it on the air, you want the record to start at just this point. You can pull this lever back up, and it takes the needle off the record but holds it in the same place. That way when we go to put this record on air, you can just put the lever back down and it goes to the same part of the song. When you're done playing a record, you can pull this back up, it takes the needle off, move it back over, and put the lock in place. One thing to be aware of, there is a little guard on this needle here. Make sure that it isn't flipped down or else you might scratch your record. You want to make sure that that is flipped up.
Okay, so we have a second turntable that works basically the exact same way. You flip it up, turn it on, take your record, place it, move the lever arm, and you can then select if your record is a 33 or 45 RPM. You move the head of the arm to wherever you want it with these two buttons here, and then place it to start playing.
So when it comes to what you can and can't play on the air, the Federal Communications Commission says, quote, "Don't air obscene programming at any time or indecent programming or profane language from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Essentially what that means is at no time of the day can you be obscene, which, quote, "depicts or describes in an offensive way sexual conduct that lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value." Decent and profane material can technically be played between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Use your judgment. If it's something really bad, don't be doing it, but if you want to play a song and it's got one or two not the best words in it, you can probably get away with it between 10 and 6. But again, use your judgment. When in doubt, don't play it.
Grace, no!
Minute, no!